Podcast on. We are live. I need a gavel, kind of, sort of. All right, we'll call this meeting to order. We'll start off with number 2, uses for American Rescue Plan Act funds. Kim, I believe.
It is. It's good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm joined by Nick Hawkins, and we are going to discuss the uses for the America Rescue Plan, or better known as the ARPA funds. So this is actually a build-off discussion when we chatted about the strategic plan, which we'll kind of have another conversation later on today with, was kind of what were we going to do with the ARPA funding. So that kind of spurred today's work session. And just to kind of set a base, I thought I'd hand it off to Nick that would talk about a little bit about how we got the funding and what we've done with the funding thus far.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. So when the American Rescue Plan came out, it was planned that we would get the funding in 2 different tranches, totaling about $922,000 for the city based on the funds were allocated to the state and then allocated based off of population. So our amount was about $922,000. Some cities did not take that, so they reallocated whatever that remainder was, and we got another about $8,000. So a total of $930,000 that we received in August of 2021 and August of 2022. We have set that up in its own special grant fund, similar to how we allocated the CARES Act funding. In this case, because our amount was so small, the recommendation was that when we report it annually, they recommended that we report it as lost revenue. So anything under $10 million, in order to make the reporting process easier, they said your best bet is just record it as lost revenue, and then you can use it for really any governmental type funding that you can think of and that governing body approves. So when I submitted the report, which is due every April, when I submitted the last report, we did record it as lost revenue with the exception of one project for diagnostic equipment that was approved by the council a few years ago. But in kind of the memo that we wrote for that, we did say that we would continue to report on how we use the funding. We're keeping it in a separate fund, and we'll continue to track how that funding is used. And I know Kim is going to walk through some of the explicit eligible uses with it, but just to give you some background, that's how we recorded it and reported it to the federal government.
So I'm going to kind of go over what the explicit eligible uses were. Again, this is what the spirit of the authorizing legislation envisioned when they started distributing these funds to communities. So there are 4 different ones to support the COVID public health economic response, as well as addressing economic harms to households, small businesses, nonprofits, impacted industries, and the public sector. Provide premium pay for eligible workers performing essential work, offering additional support to those who bear the greatest risk because of their service in critical sectors. Invest in sewer, water, broadband infrastructure, making necessary investments to improve clean drinking water, support vital wastewater and stormwater infrastructure, and expand affordable access to broadband internet, and to replace, just as Nick has mentioned, replace public sector revenue. So over the last, and again, this is not the first time that we've had kind of a conversation about what to do with these particular funds. This is kind of an ongoing, so several of the things that we kind of culled together were examples of what other communities in our region have spent these funds on, conversations we have heard as staff that the governing body has spoken on, and as well as we go to conferences to kind of learn how other communities are using these ARPA funds more at a national level. So the first one is a retention program for eligible workers performing essential work. Probably the most notable community in the region that has done this is the City of Independence. They have used these funds as one-time retention payouts, primarily for public safety, municipal services, water, wastewater operations. And if the City Council is interested, we as staff would recommend the retention program for union represented employees. Those employees were not addressed in the most recent compensation study. We have 93 represented employees, both in police and fire. Those departments operated 24/7 throughout the pandemic and often served as our front line when enforcing many of the protocols during either the stay-at-home or mask mandates. So kind of to see what those dollars amount would look like, if there was a $2,000 retention program, it'd be about $186,000. A $3,000 retention program would be $279,000. Keeping in line with how other municipalities have done this, what it is really to retain these employees. So the employees would sign a contract stating that they must stay with the city until the end of 2024, or there would be a pro rate that would be paid back to the city. And again, the City of Independence is probably the most notable municipality in the region that has offered this style of program. Number 2 would be Neighborhood Grant Program. Probably the most notable one of this would be the City of Kansas City, where residents submit their ideas for infrastructure problems within their neighborhoods. Kansas City had set up a fund as well as an oversight committee that kind of reviewed these applications and allocated the funds. Some cities have used this funding for unhoused programs and resources. Yes.
Councilmember Seth.
Do we have examples of what you mean by infrastructure projects in neighborhoods? Like, what have they used those for specifically?
They've used them for as big as pocket parks and as small as sidewalk repair. Again, you must remember the City of Kansas City has some sidewalk repair issues.
Here it's like a 6-year
So-
waiting list at this point.
Yes.
Just all generally like neighborhood suggested.
They
type
are
projects.
neighborhood,
Yeah.
correct. So non-for-profits have also put in applications. A lot of them were aimed at small home repair, as well as several neighborhood groups had looked for repairs for sidewalks throughout their entire neighborhood. Some of them had pocket parks, some of them had community gardens. Kind of the fun part about it is we don't have to come up with the ideas. The residents come up with the ideas. It's something that they feel their neighborhood is lacking. And they submit. So what Kansas City had done is set aside a finite amount of money, had set up a board to review these applications and allocate funds, is how they, kind of a real quick nutshell of how they actually did that. Kansas City is probably the other one who is probably most well known for their unhoused program and resources. They had allocated a lot of their ARPA funding for those pursuits. Funding for utility assistance program, very similar to what we did with our CARES funding. This is something that we as staff has heard the city council talk about, is expanding Lake City access to existing ball. It would serve for badminton, it'd serve for volleyball. There's a lot of different uses that this particular modular system would be used for. Victoria is on her way. She's way more knowledgeable about. She there? Oh, I'm talking like I don't have my ace quarterback right behind me
Councilmember
here. So this would be something. Victoria, did you want to come up and maybe talk a little bit about where you're
Going.
envisioning this? Victoria already has a spot picked out.
Councilmember Grace had a
I
question.
got a quick
real
question. What's the playing surface? Is that grass?
Oh, that's my fault. Now you're on.
So it is not grass, it's a turf multi-use surface.
I appreciate you looking into this. And don't we already have volleyball and soccer at Mackin Park?
So we do, but one of the problems that we experience is when you have the heavy use play in either of those areas, there's a lot of ruts. We close down those areas to aerate and things like that. So this would address some drainage issues. It would address the ruts. We would have multi-use programming that we could do there year-round, essentially.
I guess the thing that bothers me about this as somebody that plays basketball, my kids play basketball, is it's just not like dribbling a basketball on here. I would rather just have like a completely separate basketball court with like either asphalt or, some type of basketball flooring, because if you take a kid and they're dribbling on turf and then take them.
It's not like the turf like you're thinking like on Diamond One or anything. You see this in a lot of areas now. It's like more of a multi-surface. So it's not like you would be dribbling the ball on Diamond One turf.
Okay. Well, consider me highly skeptical. Like, I would rather have a separate soccer on grass, volleyball. Like, at one time, we even had sand volleyball at Mac, and that's gone, right? That was
That's
like
where
in
our
the-
building is now.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I thought. And kind of where the wheel park is, when I was a kid, there was a basketball court there.
also where we are now.
Yes. And was there 2 goals there, or was it just one? I can't remember. It's been 30 years or.
I'm thinking it was just one, but I'm
Just
not
one,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in a perfect world scenario, we would have like an actual basketball court with 2 goals, but
Sure.
even if we could just have a half a court with 1 goal, I mean, I would rather have that than this personally. I understand that you're trying to like save space, but I don't know, I'm skeptical of playing basketball on turf.
Is there another place in Kansas City that utilizes this?
Not that I'm aware of, but
Okay.
I could definitely look into that.
Yeah,
So,
because I had asked you the similar question when I first saw it.
Yes.
Thinking the same. Thank you. Further questions on this? Oh, Councilmember Tull.
Actually do. You said one of the advantages is how it deals with water. Can you talk about the difference between using something like this in a basketball court as far as water retention and?
I haven't looked into like between that, like a basketball court would also address some of the drainage issues in that area. So we were looking at the green space that's on the other side of our parking lot across from our building, right between the North Clay track and the parking lot, and being able to utilize 2 of these systems right there with then in between them, another space for kind of families, community to congregate, seating area, maybe some small play for toddlers and things while parents are watching matches and things like that. So as far as like the drainage issue, if it rains now, it's just called off because it's muddy. So doing something like this would allow us to still, if it has rained, it would be the same as Diamond One. We could still play on the surface, after it's done raining. As far as if we just did basketball courts there, that too, it would be concrete and you could still play on it, but that's not really, at this time, that's not something that we program, so it would just be more of a leisure space, I guess.
Did you say you thought you could fit 2 of these?
Yes, because they would go, if you were coming along Clark Ferguson, you would have one, and then kind of the seating area, and then a second one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
They're 300 each.
No, that would be the total if we did it all as one
Okay.
large project. So the 2 courts with the center
Okay, thank you.
area.
Councilmember Roberts.
So underneath these, I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around playing basketball. I know there's like a lot of variety of different sizes of turfs and like how the turf is actually built. Is there concrete underneath this, or would it just be like the sand, like leveling sand, or do you know how that, like what the base is? Because I think that then I could maybe like understand how you could dribble on this without it feeling like grass or dirt.
Yes. That, I can get back to you on that. I really, this is the very beginning
Yeah.
stages, and then this kind of came about, so,
That's cool.
yeah.
I think a little more information, but I think this is really cool. It's a great idea.
This time you're done.
Okay.
Thank you. For now, unless you have something else. Please.
The last one that we had from our slide deck, and there is a letter from the North Kansas City Hospital that's at your dais that I kind of address after this particular item. The EPA has revised its lead and copper rule, and in August of last year, they released the guidance of kind of what that means to municipalities, and they developed the maintaining a service line inventory, which kind of gives us an understanding of what our marching orders are in order to complete this inventory of our water distribution system. That inventory is mandatory, and again, these are all mandatory items. We must comply because of our distribution license. We must have that inventory completed by October 16th, 2024. Once the inventory is complete and we kind of have an understanding of where any lead or copper might be within our system, we must develop a lead service line replacement strategy. There is federal revolving loans for this particular replacement strategy. However, the keyword there is loans. We would be responsible for any lead service pipes that are found through this process. So one of the thoughts is to use federal money to pay for a unfunded federal mandate. When we complete this inventory and have a better understanding of what our inventory looks like and an understanding of the financial impact to replace this, we will have to weave these into our water and sewer rates. This is a mandatory thing that we as water distribution must comply with.
Councilmember Smith. Sorry.
So this might be a question for Anthony. Is this being looked at through the studies we're doing?
It is not. It's a separate item that's in our budget, though. But Anthony, come on up. Come on up, because all of the rest of these questions are all
There'll be
you.
follow-up.
So,
So,
as Kim said, no.
so we're not looking to see, but I mean, I imagine if we're doing a full inventory of our water delivery system, we'll know if there's lead service lines.
Well, the master plan that you're looking at would be more the distribution and transmission mains, so the larger, think like 4 inches and up to like 16-inch transmission mains that we have. The lead and copper inventory, which is something we've already started, actually, just kind of going through all of our different service connections, mapping out where different buildings have been built, what year, because you can kind of, say, okay, after 1985, we adopted no lead in our system, so we can kind of start to whittle down where we're looking specifically for lead. What will end up happening eventually is us using some of the money we've budgeted this year to start doing some potholing, physical hydro excavating of different service lines. Kim has a really good graphic up here. I didn't know you were going to have that. Each service line has about 4 different sections. Each one of them could be lead. So you can't just open up the meter pit, look at what you have. That is one source of data. We also plan on sending out information to residents to look in, crawl spaces or in their basements where water lines enter. That's another source of data. But then right at the connection of the main is actually usually the place where you can find lead. They're called goosenecks, where it was bent off of the main and then coupled with copper to go on. So we've already kind of started the process of inventory. What Kim is talking about is after that inventory process is complete, October of 2024, there's going to be a replacement program that will then follow. So once we know what our inventory is, again, we might not have as much as we think, and at this point, we don't know how to actually scale until we get through the inventory.
So to clarify, we're talking about service lines from our mains, which are, none of our mains are lead, that go out to houses and businesses. And without getting into the weeds, because we'll hear more about this later, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Is there a way to just test it at the source? Since it's not coming from our main, can you not test for trace amounts of lead in the fixtures of whatever house or building we suspect, rather than digging holes or?
Well, no. So we do test for lead on a yearly, annual basis already. We send out test kits to different houses for that testing. We haven't had one come back with lead.
Sorry, Claire. Yeah. It's the same houses every year you test.
The same houses
You
every
don't-
year,
you're
yes.
not-
Has to do with the
yeah.
statistics of, how
Yeah.
you actually track something
Yeah.
for moving around every year. But at the water treatment plant, we put phosphate into the system that actually coats the mains and prevents, if there is lead in the system, from leaking into the water. That's a pretty common practice all across the country.
Sure.
So that prevents, if you have a lead service line on a house, from letting that lead seep back into the system.
So it's coded, even if we tested, it wouldn't just, gotcha.
Right.
Okay. All right. Sounds like a fun project.
It is.
Councilmember Saber.
I think you just answered the question about our testing program at residences,
Yes.
and we do that annually.
That's an annual thing we do for, I could be wrong on that, might be, is it annual? Okay, it's annual, I think so. Because we publish a water quality report every year.
Yeah, it's part of our mandated reporting process through the state in order to keep our licensing.
And that's lead in the water, and that, we're testing for lead in the actual water versus.
Coming out of the taps.
Right, versus what's actually, the pipe itself is made out of.
And we do, and what process do we use, the double flush, or?
I'm not sure. I would have to
Okay.
get back to you on that.
All right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
just kidding.
Yeah.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Just related to the timing of all this, with the survey being done in 2024, I guess, with this grant program, is there a timeline to expend these funds, or since we've already recognized lost revenue, did that satisfy the requirement and now they're kind of clear in the city's account? Like, how does that work?
unless I'm wrong, the initial deadline to have the funds appropriated is by the end of 2024 and to have them expended by the end of 2026. It may have been extended. I have to double check on that. But the last I remember, it was 2026 is when you have to have them expended. 2024, you have to have it planned.
Okay.
Our goal with this inventory would have this completed in advance of the 2024 budget cycle. That way we have an understanding and can appropriate those funds should the city council choose to take some of this ARPA funding toward the replacement plan.
Councilmember Smith.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused. I thought initially when we recognized it as replacing lost revenue, that was in fact spending the money. It's like we spent it to replace the lost revenue. Are we still, now that it's in, I mean, it became kind of a part of the general fund after that, did we keep it earmarked ARPA?
We have it in a special allocation fund. We kept those funds separate, and through the budget process, we had talked about the fact that those monies are earmarked or put into a special fund, and we look to you to kind of tell us how you would like them appropriated. Throughout, when we reported it as lost revenue, we had talked about the fact that we anticipated the funding being allocated in the spirit of the authorizing legislation, which was kind of those 4 nodes.
So does that still mean, now that it's been recognized as spent to cover lost revenue, that we still are beholden to those deadlines, that it has to be further earmarked by 2024 and then like out the door by 26? Because I thought we were spending it by earmarking it as, or by using it to replace lost revenue.
Like we're free and clear of the government.
Yeah, I thought we
Federal
were.
government's preemptive.
Yeah, and then
We've
like
done
we'll
one of the
continue.
options.
Yeah, we'll continue to spend it in the spirit of like what was here, and we know the money. But I'm just clarifying, like, is there a deadline that we have to get this money now out the door and in use, or is it something that we can potentially wait for the right project or the right initiatives to come along?
I think you could allocate it by 2024 and have it spent by 2026. I hate to say it's $900,000 in a multi-million-dollar budget. It's not a astronomical amount
Sure.
of money in context. The projects that we kind of have pitched here tonight, each one of them could probably take a good substantial chunk of that funding. Really, the spirit of this funding was to get the money into the economy.
Right.
That was one of the reasons why they put backstop dates in it. It's one of the reasons why they suggested that what they didn't want is cities to sit on this money. They really wanted cities to take this money and do something with it. So that's why when we reported it as lost revenue, we kind of wanted the spirit of that legislation with those timelines imagined in the monies that we received.
Yeah, I'm still a little.
Councilmember Stowe, there was that a hand?
Maybe this was mentioned already, but was there like a range or an idea of the cost of just either of the survey of the, let me look at the right word.
So in the budget, we budgeted $200,000 for the survey. That's in this current fiscal operating year. Again, what we are hoping is to kind of have a lot of that survey work done in the calendar of 2023, well in advance of this regulatory date of October 16th. And that is really because we're pretty fiscal year minded here. I kind of wanted to have an understanding of how much, what does our inventory look like? And what would a replacement plan? Because if you think about it, this is going to be a very hot industry for people. We are all beholden to this federal mandate. Every city in the United States has this same guideline where the inventory must be met and you must have a replacement plan, all within the same. And there's only so many companies that do this style of work. So our hope is to be a little earlier in the game than others. I would like to point out just real fast that I did receive an email from Dr. Righteous around 5 o'clock today. I did print out his letter. It is at your dais. It was too late for our presentation and the materials that we had distributed in advance of this particular meeting, but the North Kansas City Hospital would like consideration for ARPA funding as well. The details for that are in this meeting, and I do believe I saw a North Kansas City Hospital staffer who probably would love to come up and chat.
Just one question on the revenue replacement. So we just can't declare this revenue replacement and then just move on with life?
You can. We could allocate that through this fiscal year's.
Yeah.
We would have to do that by a budget amendment, Again, because
just-
when we set the budget,
Yeah.
we put it into a special allocation
I was just
fund.
curious because a lot of these projects so far would appear to be eligible for general fund spending anyways, regardless of whatever the federal rules say. Okay. Council members. Is there someone else? Are you pointing?
No, to me.
Oh, okay. That
I'm
is
pointing to me.
Councilmember Saper.
Thank you. Yeah, I see this money as basic infrastructure money, much as we've relied on the gaming fund for a lot of basic infrastructure and not operating expenses, which you could translate into lost revenue for the city is a lot of operating expense. But this is a different category, it seems to me. We should reserve it for one of these projects that deals with the city infrastructure we can see, and maybe infrastructure, and probably infrastructure that we can't see. It's under the ground.
There we go. Councilmember Roberts.
You almost did it. I was like, he's never going to look over here again.
Oh, I glanced.
I think we should, I mean, there's a lot of great projects here. I just did a little math here. I think we should break it out into three and try to service a little bit of everything here if we can. I think the retention project is great. And so I earmarked like the $2,000 mark, which I think was like $186,000 and some change. And then I say let's put $200,000 towards that parks, or whether it be a real basketball court or some kind of multi-use. I think that's a good earmark. And we might get some of it back, right? We don't know exactly what the costs are going to look like on that. And then the rest, which was around $386,000, we hold for that water plan, which might not be anything depending on how much we have to do, but it at least has some money, and it accomplishes three different things. I think retention on employees that were missed on the compensation study. I think we have something that residents can actually physically touch and play with the parks. And then, of course, the residents won't know until it hits their pocket, but reducing some of the fees on this water would, I think, help realize a lot of this. So that's kind of what I have, and that hits about $911,000, I think, broken out roughly into that.
Was that all of your presentation, Cam? Do you have more?
That's all we have.
Okay. Councilmember Smith, and then Saper.
So with this looming water situation, the lead in the water situation, like I think we hold off on to the thing that really hit my ear was we're gonna have to run that through our water and sewer rates, and this would be not only an infrastructure piece but a direct benefit to the residents that it wouldn't, or it would offset some rise in the water and sewer rates. Mm-hmm. So if we know this is coming, it would almost be a little irresponsible to spend the money on things that are like nice to haves. I would love to have some multi-use facilities in the parks, but like we can do that through the general fund. We can allocate that way. But if we're going to earmark these funds, I'd really like to see us hold and see what happens with the lead pipe inventory, because that can get really expensive if we find, even an inkling of it.
I'm going to jump ahead of you. I said you were next real quick. Just to remind council that we do also currently have the stormwater master plan ongoing. The sanitary stormwater master plan, or I said both, I combined them. They should not be combined. The sanitary system master plan is out for bid right now, and then water distribution farther beyond that at some point. And obviously, all three of those are probably going to come with very astronomical bills as well. There, now Councilmember Saper.
Okay. The retention program for eligible workers is really sort of an ongoing expense, operating expense. And again, I would like to reserve these funds for special infrastructure projects rather than ongoing regular expenses. Number two, I think we need to really consider Link City expansion into the many multifamily residential units that have no access to it. Now, I know those units have to probably do all their interior work in some way or other, but we should cover the cost of getting Link City to those facilities. And right now, we really don't do it in a way that we found out with one of the apartment projects in town, in which they have to bill the residents each time there's a change in an apartment, even though the lines are there, the facilities are there, and it just requires essentially back office work. So I would really like to use some of the funds for that, as well as reserving, again, a good chunk of it at this point to see what happens with the lead copper rule. Thank you.
Thank you. There you go. Councilmember Clark.
Is there already, I may have missed it, and I apologize, is there already an HR retention policy in place?
No, we don't, no, this is, like I said, and I'm patterning this heavily off of how independents use their ARPA funding.
Okay.
Specifically for police and fire, because they were seeing a significant drift in their employment base in those two functions. And again, a lot of it was also, most cities did, they were kind of the front line specifically during the COVID restrictions, mask mandate, stay at home. So a lot of people honestly decided to leave the field at that point. It was not something that they felt like they had signed up for. So the City of Independence did institute a retention program to help kind of offset those tasks that were being asked of those particular employees, with the understanding that you would stay to the end of 2024. This would be, again, to retain you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Toll.
I liked Adam's plan of spreading it out. I had my numbers a little bit different, but essentially the same idea. And I would support the retention plan specifically because it's ARPA funds. And I know a lot of police and fire had to work multiple back-to-back shifts to cover for people that had tested positive, and it truly was a hardship on them and their families. So even though it might be an ongoing cost that we look at for retention, I think it would be very appropriate to look at that for this funding. And I do think we should probably reserve about half the money for the pipes, but I see the pipes as something, we all know that the cost of water has already gone up significantly as we were artificially holding those numbers low with gaming funds indefinitely. So that was a hardship on people. And I see when this comes through, we're going to have to step up and offset that cost. We can't pass that on to the residents. And unlike artificially holding our monthly rates low, this is going to be a one-time thing. I mean, a huge one-time thing, but it's going to be a one-time thing. And I don't think it would be inappropriate to reach into other funds to offset that cost and to help our residents.
Thank you. Further comments? Councilmember Graves.
Yeah, I just think we need to focus on needs over wants. I am in favor of the retention program. The police and fire went above and beyond during COVID while we were all sitting at home and put themselves in harm's way, and I would be in favor of that. And in spirit of needs over wants, as the mayor pointed out, I don't think people in the community actually realize the water study that's going on right now, how all-encompassing it is and how old our system is. The cost of upgrading does anybody even have, I mean, it's going to be what, tens of millions of dollars, right?
Small. Anthony's saying no, but I can tell you that very small sections are very expensive. So I know it's going to be a very large number.
Yeah, please understand.
Over many years, yeah. So, I mean,
Many years.
and just to kind of connect the dots for people, you know, we're about to transition into a discussion about the strategic plan. And if you go under financial stewardship, I mean, the city council, not me, but the city council has put on here goal 4, consider debt issuance for major projects, i.e. with water infrastructure. So we're already discussing the city taking debt to deal with our water infrastructure. These funds, one of the authorized expenses is for water infrastructure. So to me, I mean, it's a no-brainer. We know that we have a gigantic project about to get dropped on us that we can't afford. Thus, we're seeking debt. So let's, take care of our police and fire and then take care of our water. And I'm all for playing basketball and stuff, guys, but can we please focus on needs instead of just fun stuff? So that's it.
All right, we're all over the place here. You got clear direction there. I'll take that as a no. All right, we shall continue. Trying to reorganize my thoughts and my questions here. Yeah, was there another one over here? Okay, Councilmember Toll, please.
The only other thing I would add to that is that even if we reserved all of this funding, it's not going to make a dent. It's not going to make a dent. So if we spend some of the money on the things, on a little bit of something that we want, because all of this money we're going to be pumping into the water system is necessary and it absolutely has to happen. But like Adam had said, you can't touch it, you can't use it, you can't see it. We know it's going to happen, we know it has to happen. So this is really just a small sliver of a very huge budget that we're going to be spending on something that people can really use and utilize. And as far as the basketball court goes, the one that you showed that's the multi-surface versus not, if you were fitting 2 courts, I could see that as maybe doing 1 multi-surface and 1 true basketball court, because I know for having kids that have gone through the Parks and Rec department, you could really use that turf for itty-bitty soccer or lots of other things that happen in the park where the rainouts would cause delays. So that's just another idea.
Councilmember Smith.
It seems like the immediacy, there's like essentially broad support for the retention program. So that seems like something we could get funded pretty quickly and keep our people here. Beyond that, the rest of it seems like medium and longer term stuff that we could, I don't like to kick the can too much, but we could fund the retention program and then kind of keep thinking about the other uses.
Since we seem to have kind of circled on that particular one, can I get some direction over if you, and I have it on the screens, if you were looking at the $2,000 or $3,000 option?
Okay. You have something on that.
Do we want to get thoughts from the chiefs in the back, what they're thinking as far as retention for their people? Making your pitches.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Saper.
Yeah, there seems to be sort of a logical disconnect going on here. It's a retention program, and are we having a retention problem?
Yes and no. So I do believe that the renegotiation of both union contracts has helped significantly. I do think that it's still a pretty tough job day to day, and we are, we're not the only ones having union negotiations. Ours is now a year to a year and a half old. You do have a lot of competing jurisdictions that have newer union contracts, and I'll be candid, with a different price point. So I think that you will have some as our contracts age. I do think that we would have some people maybe looking. I do believe that this retention program could perhaps stop a few eyes from looking.
Further, it seems to me that if we would go into renegotiation of those labor agreements, that would be the proper place for any increases to again, retain people and put it into the proper city budget of an operating expense, rather than using this specific money in any way to do, if the 2,000, 3,000 would probably not make the difference in terms of as opposed to a renegotiated contract that we could then put into an ongoing budget. That seems much more fiscally responsible.
All right, Chief. Councilmember Clark. Okay, and you're kicking too. He moved closer. I saw that, but I wasn't sure if he's fully committed to speaking yet.
Sneaking.
Good evening. Yeah, that was Stephen.
For the police department, we don't have a retention issue right now. Are people thinking about looking for other careers? Yes. What's important for us is keeping the people that we have now, because we are hiring for one position right now. We had 60-plus applications in our portal. 7 people showed up to take the test. That's unheard of. We used to have hundreds of people show up to take tests for police and fire service jobs. So it's important for us to keep the people that we have now, and this gesture would probably go a long way for some of those people. So, thank you.
Oh, see, now the pressure. See, I like how they do this. This is perfect.
And to Councilman Saper, to your point about putting in a general fund, the contract are multi-year contracts for the wages. And what's happened is after we renegotiated to where the price point was at that time, the market has dramatically changed in the last year to year and a half. So that contract won't be opening until late 2024 for the wages, to put those in the contract at that time. So this is kind of to give those people that are here now that little extra to maybe not look someplace else that pays significantly higher than we do at this point.
Couldn't we reopen those negotiations prior to the
We could,
expiration
but we
of the contract?
typically try not to ever
Has-
reopen the negotiations because that sets a precedent that kind of takes away from the purpose of having a contract.
I guess we could flip the question. Has the union asked to reopen?
No, they have not.
Okay. Further council member comments?
Do we want to land on an amount? 2,000?
Well, okay, we'll start.
I'm in for
Maybe
two.
we'll start with a vote on retention policy in general. Okay, do we see?
Yeah.
Are we favorable towards a retention policy? One?
Yes.
Okay, we'll further the conversation. I see enough. Your no is noted. Thank you. What amount do we have?
I'm going to.
We got
2,000.
two. We'll do this
Two.
one quick. Two.
Two.
Sold.
And whatever. We'll go with two. There we go.
All done there.
Okay, the next item of remaining would be, the general support seemed to be for holding for infrastructure in some regard, whether that be the lateral program or whether that be, and sorry, I didn't mean that to slight you. Okay, I should include I'll just go ahead and include it anyways. Any interest in the multi-use, I'm going to say it wrong, multi-sport area in Mackin Park? There we go. Councilmember Till. Councilmember Roberts.
Whether it be that or a combination of an actual basketball court and one of those, since we're talking two, yes, I'm in favor of using the funds that the community can quickly and easily get out and utilize.
Councilmember Roberts.
Can we, it seems like the next two things we're going to talk about, we have literally no idea what value these hold. Is it possible to, since we're all good with the retention, we could all be good with this. We don't really know, like it's 300,000 for these two courts, but maybe it becomes a concrete basketball goal and it's, I don't know, half the cost or double the cost, who knows? Can we get those numbers and see what like estimates will look like rather than this, so we can have a better picture of what we could contribute?
I think you brought up a good point before we do continue. We can just continue to hold these funds as well and make this decision at a later point if that's what council would rather do instead of continue on.
That's what I think. I think we all agree on
Right.
retention. I think let's hold it and figure out
Councilmember
more.
Yeah, I would say the
Clark.
same. Yeah.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I do want to explore this, maybe at a future work session, and figure out what is the substrate, what other options do we have for that space, because, yes, we do want to see some basketball happening in Mackin. I think that's been made pretty clear, but right now we have a rendering, I believe it's CGI, and a very round number, so love to hear more, though.
There we go. So we will continue this on another date, correct? Good?
Perfect.
Good?
Sounds
Good?
great.
All right, item number, I've written on all my sheets now. There we go. Item number 3, city strategic plan update, ideas, and prioritization. Kim.
Okay, and again, this is kind of an ongoing conversation. I know that we only have a few minutes left in the work session. I do believe that, when you're talking about big ideas that really involve what the future of the city is, you shouldn't try to kind of cram it into a tiny timeline. I did send these out in advance of the meeting. That way we could, you guys could kind of look at what some of the topics that I heard that have been talked about before. Just a real quick, the vision statement is the big picture, and then the strategic item is kind of how we're going to get there. So under number 1, financial stewardship, the goals that are kind of remaining from the original version is implement use tax, remove ongoing expenses from the gaming fund, and consider debt issuance for major projects. Everything that's kind of below this white space here are all the things that we've discussed before, either the first time we had our conversation about the strategic plan or the last time that we had a work session. I didn't know if the governing body had any thoughts of what they would like to add.
Here we go. Councilmember Saper, ready to go.
With 15 minutes left before the regular council meeting is to begin, it's really not the time to take this up. I would prefer, very much prefer, that we schedule another retreat, as we did when we first put these together, and we could spend a whole day going over these various options, updating them, adding some things, maybe removing some things, and give it the kind of attention it really deserves.
I like
rather
this.
than tonight.
I like this first and third Thursday at 6 p.m. retreat, though. More meetings.
Tuesday?
Unreal. First and third Tuesday. What did I say, Thursday?
Yeah. Wait, what?
It's some day of the week. I'm here, aren't I? Anyone else have ideas on what to do with this? I mean, I can't see, obviously, that this is meant to be a multi-year plan, and the point of this exercise was that several of these items have been checked off. So it's kind of what do we put in place? It wasn't necessarily meant to be a complete overhaul of everything we did. But I do see your point as well. Is there comments? While we have this up, and we do have 15 minutes. Councilmember Toll.
Do we have vacant city-owned property to speak of, other than the, yes?
Yeah,
what is
there
it?
are a couple of areas, probably Caboose Park and the city-owned property that's over by the Cherry intersection.
Yeah, that's what I was.
And again, the Cherry intersection, we're still trying to
I was gonna say,
get
I
an
think-
understanding of who owns what over there
Yeah.
so that we could square off that parcel. And again, those would go through a public process to solicit what could go here.
So those are the two parcels?
Those are the two that are kind of open right now.
Okay.
All right, what else we got? Dang, everyone just likes things the way they are. It looks like we'll take this as written.
When again, so a lot of it, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the why of the timing. Nick and I have actually already begun the budget process. So what we are hoping to do is if there were any new priorities that, and I'll be honest, almost every priority is going to have some kind of fiscal understanding or fiscal structure to make it actually happen. So we're kind of saying, hey, we've done a lot of things. There's still some work to do. And is there anything new that as we begin the next budget cycle, what would you like to see done?
Here we go. What do we got, Councilmember Toll?
Something we've talked about a lot here and there, and especially in closed session meetings that keeps coming up, is be mindful and intentional when abating taxes. We don't have anything in place that links the tax abatements that we give to results that we want. So if it were up to me, I would push that up in priority. I don't know if anyone else agrees, but it's something that I've heard the council discuss many, many times every time we get a new project. And then the answer is, well, we don't have anything in place like that, but we could do X, Y, Z. So we need to get something in place so we have those options.
And one that I'll ask under infrastructure, I know we've talked about it on and off, and it's part of the parking study we did several years ago, was looking for additional ADA parking in the Armour area as well. That might be something worth looking at and evaluating where and how we can do that. That was at hand. Was there Councilmember Smith?
Trying to look, I'm looking back through I believe, I'm not sure where the fall infrastructure community works, but maybe like a public parking audit at this point, having a good idea of what, and when, where, and how it's signed would be pretty useful, seeing as we've got a whole cropping up of parking situations.
Councilmember Saker.
Well, if we're going to do this today for.
There, I knew I'd get him to crack.
Yes, you did. I would like us to really give us some serious thought to child and adult care services. Now, it lists through people care services, but attack and start doing some real background and possibility study of how we can offer that to residents, adult care and child care, because some families are faced with a situation in which they have to provide both at very high costs. And anything that any service we can provide to the residents of North Kansas City is something we should be doing.
Thank you. Further items to be added or commented on or removed, modified.
So I think at a future meeting,
Oh,
I
yes.
may go through a prioritization process for these. I don't think that we've got the time to kind of do that here, but again,
I'm
you
here
know,
all
best
night.
practice is 3 to 4 goals per
Yeah.
section. That way we can give it the time and attention it needs.
So overall, though, I think we do have a good base of items to pull that from, although we should further consider revisiting it all. But I think for now, we do have enough goals to move forward with. There we go. With that, I don't have to make an announcement because we're early. There we go. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second. Is there a second?
Second.
There we go. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.